They denied my patent, told me I wasn't original enough, told me the system didn't have room for people like me. So I didn't argue, I didn't protest, I just went quiet and built the global company that used the very idea they tried to steal. Today, they sign contracts with my name hidden in the fine print. They didn't break me, they built my blueprint. I didn't invent the next iPhone, I didn't discover a new planet. I just built something simple, a material that could replace plastic, cheaper, stronger, biodegradable in 18 months, something the world needed. I called it EcoThread, worked on it for 4 years in a rented workshop that smelled like oil and failure, tested it until my hands cracked, pitched it until my voice wore out. When the first sample survived a winter outside without breaking, I knew it wasn't a dream anymore, it was real. I saved every extra dollar I had, skipped meals, missed birthdays, lived off coffee and cheap noodles, all to file that patent. It took 6 months to prepare the application. Diagrams, testing records, legal support, everything the system asked for, packaged clean and professional. I submitted it with shaking hands, and for the first time in my life, I believed I was about to cross the line between trying and becoming. 3 months later, the letter arrived. Patent rejected. Does not meet standards of innovation. Potential overlap with existing technologies. I sat there holding the letter like it was written in a language I didn't understand, because I knew the technology inside out, knew it didn't overlap with anything on the market, knew it was real. Still, I tried to swallow it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I missed a detail. Maybe I wasn't ready. But then, a month later, I saw an article. Major Corp partners with GreenGen to launch new sustainable plastic alternative. There it was, my diagrams, my design, rebranded, polished, wrapped in $1 billion press release. It wasn't a mistake. It was a theft. I traced the timeline. 3 months before my rejection, I'd pitched GreenGen at a startup showcase, shared prototypes under NDA, had meetings, talked about potential licensing. They smiled, nodded, said they needed time to evaluate, time they used to bury me, time they used to copy me. They didn't reject me because it wasn't good enough. They rejected me because they wanted it without paying for it, because I was just a guy with a dream and no army, because they thought I'd roll over. And for a while, I almost did. I stayed home for days, ignored calls, deleted my social media. It wasn't just about losing an invention. It was about realizing the rules were rigged. But after the fifth night, when the anger dried up, something colder settled in, clarity. If they could build an empire off my back, so could I. Just quieter, smarter, longer lasting. I didn't call lawyers, didn't start a Twitter thread, didn't send rage emails. I went silent. And in that silence, I started building something they couldn't steal. Because you can copy a product, you can't copy a mission. I didn't announce anything, didn't tell friends, didn't update LinkedIn, didn't post some big speech about proving them wrong. I went silent because the kind of empire I wanted to build didn't need witnesses, it needed foundations. I started small, sold my car, rented a corner of an abandoned warehouse, pitched to second-tier investors, the ones big corporations ignored, people who didn't want quick flips, people who knew real change takes years. I offered them a deal, invest in EcoThread 2.0. I won't promise fame, I'll promise ownership of a future the world can't avoid. Two said no, one said maybe. One, a woman who ran her own tiny logistics firm, said yes, $20,000. Barely enough to survive 6 months, but it was oxygen. I rebuilt EcoThread from scratch, tweaked the formula, made it stronger, lighter, more adaptable, something even GreenGen's fake version couldn't match. I reached out to emerging markets, small countries that didn't have lobbying giants pulling their government strings, signed pilot contracts with local builders. EcoThread became the material of farm shelters in drought zones, flood barriers in coastal villages, tiny victories, invisible on the global stage. But every small success laid bricks for something bigger. By year 2, EcoThread wasn't just a concept. It was moving in shipping containers across 3 continents, quietly, effortlessly. While the same big corporations that mocked me were too busy chasing headlines, I learned their language, studied their contracts, predicted their product rollouts, built versions of their solutions, cheaper, faster, better, and delivered them before they could. No lawyers, no protests, just quiet disruption. Meanwhile, their sustainable plastic alternative began failing under pressure. Cracks in cold climates, warping under heat, poor biodegradation results, lawsuits brewing, public trust cracking, and behind every crack, a silent competitor selling the solution. I wasn't screaming for justice anymore. I was earning it, one buried contract at a time. By the end of the third year, GreenGen, the same corporation that stole my future, was now unknowingly buying EcoFred components through subcontracted deals. They thought they could erase me. Instead, they became one more client on my invoice list. 3 years later, they still didn't know. GreenGen thought they were buying generic biodegradable composites from a small logistics supplier based out of Southeast Asia. What they didn't realize, that supplier's biggest equity holder was me. Every unit they ordered, every pallet they deployed, every government contract they won, came with a silent cut sent back to EcoFred Holdings. I didn't crash their company. I fed it until it couldn't operate without the very material they once tried to bury. When their VP of Sustainability announced a new era of green products, I watched the press conference from a small office overlooking a supply yard. No champagne, no applause, just quiet satisfaction. Because the real win wasn't seeing them struggle. It was seeing them succeed, using the technology they once said wasn't good enough. But the final move, that needed to be deliberate. The Global Materials Innovation Summit was approaching. The biggest companies would gather, panels, keynotes, award ceremonies. GreenGen was nominated for Innovation in Sustainability for products built on my material. I secured a last-minute sponsorship deal under a different shell company. Tiny logo, barely noticeable, buried at the bottom of the event program, powered by EcoFred. It wasn't a shout, it was a watermark, a quiet, permanent signature. When I walked into the summit, nobody recognized me. No red carpets, no flashing cameras, just rows of executives in tailored suits, clinking glasses over victories they barely understood. I sat at the back, watched GreenGen's CEO walk onto the stage, thank the audience, talk about innovation, talk about resilience, talk about future leadership. Not once did he mention the people they silenced along the way. He didn't have to, because while he stood in the spotlight, I sat in the shadows, owning the stage beneath his feet. Later that evening, during the networking event, one of GreenGen's new directors approached me. Polite smile, business card in hand. "We're expanding into Africa. You seem connected to a few supply chains we're trying to access." I accepted the card, told him I'd think about it. Didn't mention I already owned the factories he was trying to negotiate with. Didn't mention that every new market he wanted to enter already had EcoFred contracts stitched into the soil. You see, revenge isn't about tearing them down. It's about building something they can't climb without you. And by the time they realize it, it's too late to call it theft. It's just called business. The CEO of GreenGen found me the next day. Not planned, not announced. Just a random collision in a side hall at the summit. He looked tired, worn, like someone used to winning, but feeling the ground shift under his shoes without knowing why. He stuck out his hand, friendly, too friendly. "You look familiar," he said. "Were you part of the new material movement? Eco-based composites?" I smiled. Just enough. "Something like that." He introduced himself. Like I didn't already know the name printed on half the contracts I read at night while building my empire. He asked what company I was with. I pointed to the smallest logo on the summit wall, the one no one noticed, the one that powered everything they celebrated. "EcoFred," I said. He froze, just a second, blinking, connecting dots he should have connected years ago. "We've heard good things," he said cautiously. "Maybe there's synergy." There it was, the invitation, the attempt to loop me in after the empire was already built, after they thought they buried me, after they spent 3 years scaling ladders that I now own the rungs to. I shook his hand again, firm professional. "Maybe. We'll be in touch." And that was it. No long speech, no confrontation, no accusations about patents or betrayals, just silence, just business, because if you do revenge right, you don't raise your voice, you raise your invoice. As I walked away, I didn't look back, didn't need to, because some victories aren't announced, they're lived. I left the summit the same way I entered it. No cameras, no interviews, no awards, just silence. The kind of silence that fills a room after the real winner walks out. The next morning, while executives scrambled through panels and breakfast meetings, I boarded a flight home. Economy seat, window view, a simple notebook in my lap. No one asked for selfies. No one knew what deals were already stitched underneath their headlines. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Because this wasn't about being famous. It wasn't about being seen. It was about building something so necessary that even those who doubted you can't function without it. When I landed, my assistant handed me the weekly report. Another 4 new territories open contracts with EcoFred. Another set of CEOs added to the client database, including 2 who once sat on the patent review board that denied me. I didn't smile. Didn't feel victory the way movies make you believe it comes. It wasn't loud, it was quiet, heavy, earned. At home, in the same tiny apartment I started EcoFred from, I pinned one thing to my wall. A copy of my original patent rejection letter. Framed. Not as a wound, as a reminder. They didn't fail me. They freed me. Because if they had accepted my patent, maybe I would have signed it over too soon. Maybe I would have waited for permission too long. Maybe I would have stayed small because I thought approval meant success. Instead, they slammed the door and forced me to build a house so big, even they had to rent a room in it. I used to think revenge meant watching them fall, seeing the people who doubted you crumble under the weight of their own mistakes. But now, I know better. Revenge isn't their collapse. It's your survival. It's waking up every morning knowing you built something they said you never could, and that no apology, no award, no public recognition could ever matter more than that. They didn't destroy me when they denied my patent. They freed me. They taught me the system wasn't made for people like me, people without old money, without the right last names, without glossy degrees stamped by places they worship. But what they forgot? Systems can be bypassed or rebuilt if you're patient enough, if you're stubborn enough, if you're willing to stop asking for seats at tables you were never supposed to fit into, and build your own. Today, I don't need their validation. I don't even need their attention. Because while they argued about gatekeeping innovation, I became the gate. EcoFred doesn't have my name printed all over it. It doesn't need to. Every contract signed, every shipment made, every building wrapped in our materials is a quiet signature. Proof that dreams can't be stolen. They just change hands and find better architects. I wasn't built by their approval. I was built by their rejection. And the thing they thought would break me became the blueprint I used to outgrow them. When they closed the door, I built a city.